I find it very hard to break through.
All right, this is a very important question. There are different forms of communication, and you got to use the right form for your intended result. If we need to document information, that's what writing is for, to document information. We need to communicate something to a group of people geographically diverse. That's what writing is for. Meetings should be for interaction between people. However, a meeting cannot just go unconscious. In fact, when you give me the card for the Relatives book, what you'll also get is an article called The Meeting Magic Process, which is applying conscious communication to the meeting process. Because the problem is that, all right, remember you have two eyes to see from 2 points of view. Your more passive people will usually drop out at a meeting, and they will not contribute, you don't hear from them. Meanwhile, your more assertive people are listening for breathing changes. When somebody's speaking and their breathing stops, they leap into the space, but they're not really listening to each other. So there's a few things that have to be put in place in a meeting to make it work. First of all, we need some sort of cue, a lineup of who's going to speak. And so we have a whiteboard there, and when people are ready to speak, we put their name on the whiteboard, and there's a limited amount of time. Let's say it's a 2-minute amount of time that you can say what you have to say. And then the other thing we have to do is have a focal point, which we could also use that whiteboard for. And what that would be is you'd have all right, imagine this, you'd have a box called topic, and you'd have a box called process, and then down the side you have a cue. Whatever topic is on the floor at that moment goes in the topic box. Whatever process is on the floor goes in the process box. So we're brainstorming or whatever. So now we know what we're talking about, we know how we're talking about it, and then we have a queue of people to speak. This keeps us focused so we don't be going off on tangents. And then the third thing that has to happen in a meeting is we have to have flight recording. You have to grab what people say and make it visual. Now, a visual communication is something that you see. An auditory communication is something that you hear. Have you ever heard somebody repeat themselves at a meeting? Have you ever heard somebody repeat themselves at a meeting? Have you ever heard somebody repeat themselves at a meeting? You know why? If a meeting is held on an auditory level and I have a concept that I feel is important to the group mind, I'm going to say it a number of times as a way of keeping it in awareness. If, on the other hand, I make my point, that gets written up on a flip chart or on a computer hooked up to a monitor, I see it, I see you see it, I get that you get it. And then the other thing about visual communication that auditory can't do is you can see a totality of concepts. As everybody starts to speak, we see different points on the flip chart or on the computer. We see all these points, and we start to see the totality of our multiple perspectives. Remember, 2 eyes, 2 points of view. So when you combine 3 things. One is we have a focal point. We know what we're talking about now, so we don't go off on tangent. 2, we have a cue, because as soon as we have a cue, everybody starts participating. Even the most passive person in the room will go like this, and they'll get on the cue. And then we take people's contribution and and we put them on this flip chart. All of a sudden, there's no repetitions, there's no tangents. Now think about this in terms of the 10 behaviors. The problem with know-it-all and think they know-it-all behavior at a meeting is they go on and on and on and on and on. But because there's a 2-minute limit, they can't do that. The problem with whining and negativity is they talk about generalized problems, no solutions. You will not be able to write everything is wrong on a flip chart. That will make no sense. It actually forces them to get specific, and then they become like smoke detectors of problems. Sniping. Nobody's going to get on a cue and then make some sarcastic comment, so that gets eliminated. Grenade needs appreciation, but because everybody's listening to each other and what you say gets noted, anybody who needs appreciation feels appreciated. You could tell who would have become a tank because they got the biggest grin on their face because the group starts going through agenda items like a wood chipper, and then yes, maybe, and nothing come out to play because there's no competition to speak and we're all doing the same thing at the same time. So that's the meeting magic process, and it's part of my next book called Dealing with Meetings You Can't Stand. But the real summary answer here is, first of all, we have to decide what's the right form, because there's a right time to use email and there's a right thing for meetings. Then we have to make sure the meeting has a structure so it actually works, and so it's not just a waste of time, because whenever we're at a meeting, we're saying no to a whole lot more. And then we should have clear guidelines, is when do you call a meeting and how do you run it? When should you use email? When should you just get face-to-face or on the phone with people? And we, as a a group in an organization should have clear written guidelines as to when to use each form of communication. Otherwise, it's going to get misused or overused. In fact, I ran into somebody who in their organization, they now have no email Friday. If you want to say something to your coworker, you actually have to talk to them because it's been so misused. Do we have another question?